All right, and welcome back to another Indie Investor Pod. We are indie investors talking indie investing. And what we like to do on this show is basically just break it down as best we can to help educate you, help give you the little tips, the tricks, all the little things that might make you successful as an indie real estate investor. So hopefully we can bring you some value today. Hopefully we can bring some profit into your pockets is what we're going to be talking today as we dig in with David Richter here. So with that, let's get on with the show. All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Indie Investor Pod. I am super excited for my guest that I have today. It's Mr. David Richter, and I've known David for just a little over a year now, I think, and every interaction I have with him is it's always awesome. He's such a great guy, positive guy, but he's always talking about, hey, make sure your business is healthy, make sure your business is profitable, and he's kept me on my toes with some of the things I've had to think about within our business and stuff. So, David, thank you so much for joining me, my man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I always love spreading the message.
There we go. There we go. So let's dig into, David has written, if you have heard of the book from Mike Michalowicz, Profit First, David has basically taken that and wrote a real estate investing version of that. So what do real estate investors need to think about, consider, all these things? Is your business profitable? Are you putting enough aside? Are you thinking profit first? And then, taking out your expenses and all that stuff to make sure your business is healthy. So we'll dig into all that stuff here in a second. But before that, David, I'd like to just get to know you a little bit, look at the listeners to know a little bit about you. So give us a little bit about your background and kind of what you were doing, kind of how you came up and how you kind of got into investing yourself.
Sure. So I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad in college, and that was it. So
that's everybody's story, right?
Exactly. So just copy and paste there. From that. But then from there, I actually did a deal. I bought a deal and fixed it up. I actually lived in that house first, but for a couple of years then, and had rented it before I lived in it, rented it after I lived in it. I actually lease optioned it, and that tenant paid me early, and then he cashed me out 6 months later. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty nice because, like living there 2 years, I got it tax-free too, that lump sum. So I was like, okay, I like this. So then I went and looked for investors to work with, and there was an investor that in the Northwest Indiana area where I was living, I was doing deals at that time, and I just jumped into that business, and they were doing about 5, 6, 7 wholesale deals a month. So they were already a pretty decent sized company. Then they had about 5 people on the team, 5 to 7, and that's where I really cut my teeth. I got to learn more than just the deal I had done. So I started doing some more deals of my own, like had some rentals, bought some rentals from the company that I was working with, at that time too. So kind of building my own little portfolio. But then during that time there, I was there for about 5 years. We scaled that company to doing about 30 deals a month at the highest point, where we were almost doing a deal a day. And it was intense. We were doing a bunch of different exit strategies, turnkeying, wholetailing, like retail, like everything that you could think of, and rentals. We had a 100 rental portfolio and lease options too. About 80% of those were lease options. So we had a lot of things going on. And so I got to sit in every single seat in that company. So I sat marketing, acquisitions, dispositions, project management, property management, the finance seat, transaction coordination. Like I got to sit in it during the course of those 5 years, because I would go in there and I like systems and processes. So I'd go in there, we'd figure it out, and then I'd move on to the next seat. And as other people would come in. And so one of those seats was the finance seat. And I never really, I like the personal finance side. I was big on that side and really understanding how the personal finances work. But then I got to see how the business finances work. And that was really eye-opening to me, because now I got that taste of, okay, this is what it takes to operate a business. And then I saw right away, it doesn't matter how many deals you make. It matters how much you keep, and is there profit at the end of the day? And so that really opened my eyes. And from there, had a big life change where we moved across the country to be closer to family. And so I moved from there kind of with the taste of, okay, I like this, I like the financial side. I think this is a big need in the real estate space, but, I kind of just put it in the back of my head. But then when I moved to the Richmond area, Richmond, Virginia, I started working with another investor. And that was one of the areas where we went after right away, where we said the financial area, because he had someone that was doing his books. They weren't doing it right. And it was just, he didn't have his numbers up to date. It was basically being done as it could be. And so that put tremendous power back into his hands. And after going through that and some of the things we were able to do, he looked at me and said like, hey, you changed my life. And that for me just sparked it. It was like, I need to create a business specifically to help real estate investors know those numbers and implement Profit First, because at that time I had read Profit First. Gary Harper, one of my mentors, told me to read that book. So I read that book, consumed it, and then I implemented that inside the business. So that's kind of like my progression as an investor, as now a service provider who is now like on a mission to change the financial, like the whole mindset in real estate investing for finances. So that's kind of just a high level overview. There's a lot of stuff I left out, but that's where the general overview of how I got to where I am right now.
And man, that's so cool. And it's so important too. Just like where you said that, of just like, you know, the guy that you're working with down in Richmond, Virginia, was like, oh, wow, you got in my books, you changed my life. This is what I see happen all the time, especially with investors. They get into it, and they start off as like a one-man show. They're wholesaling, and they start flipping. Maybe they get some rentals. All of a sudden they have a team and they don't know how to really run the books because they don't have the background behind it. They don't have, maybe the bookkeeper wasn't one of their first hires, you know, those types of things. So, and I do want to get into that a little bit of you kind of working with other investors. You have this business, Simple CFO Solutions, working with other investors. Before we get into that though, I do want to ask you, because as you were working with these other companies and stuff like that, I know one of our first conversations like streamed around this of how we kind of got to know each other is because I don't like property management. I'm not good at property management, but yet I still have to do it all the time. Yep. And it's always been a headache for me. And within our business, it's never been profitable. Now, granted, as a wholesale business, we are picking up issues. We're picking up with problems that are either property problems, tenant problems, things like that. But property management has always kind of been an issue for us, and we have to kind of solve around it. But one of the things I was kind of talking to you about, I was saying that, hey, we tried to do like a third-party property management. And you're like, dude, just do it with a virtual assistant. Just do it remotely with a virtual assistant. You make all the decisions, let them do all this. Like, wow, that really worked. But you made that happen. Like when you were doing it with like hundreds of properties at the time, right?
Right. Yeah. That was one of the things while I was up there that we really streamlined, and that we had about a little over 100 units, doors or whatnot. And we had one virtual assistant and one in-house person. So like, but the virtual assistant did the most of the heavy lifting. Like they were calling the tenants if they were late. They were calling for maintenance requests. They were, they were doing all of the things that a typical property manager would do. And where our in-house guy was more just the higher level, like making sure that it was running and that there was meetings every day. That's where I'm a huge proponent of the daily huddle, making sure you have that. And we had that, like we had it very systematized, and that's what you have to do. If you go the virtual assistant route, the in-house route, no matter what, if it's a virtual assistant or not, you need to have a crazy good system. And I remember when I first started, we built it around Podio. So like, this was like us piecing together. I literally sat down and read, I think I have it in my bookshelf here somewhere, the Brandon Turner, I think, the Bigger Pockets book on rental investing. So I literally took that and went step by step and said, okay, this is going to be our first step, second step, third step, and like laid it all out in Podio. And then we had the property manager, the virtual assistant. He had like 4 main areas every day. It was like what applications did we receive, who's behind that we have to reach out to, what properties are vacant that we need to do repairs, and what maintenance requests are in. So like there was 4 things that he reported on every single morning, and we went over those. It was typically only a 15 to 30 minute, because we were trying to be as precise as possible. What are the major things that you need help with? And then the rest of the day was him going out and doing those core things and making sure, because we wanted to make sure current tenants were happy, like with the maintenance request, we were making sure that we're filling the properties. So making sure the repairs were happening or applications were being received. And then we were making sure that the late people, that we were on them and had a plan with them, or where are we in the eviction process. So like that was the whole meeting, and we got that boiled down, and we would meet every single day on those points and for a very short amount of time. But it was, especially with the virtual assistant, making him feel a part of the team, making sure that he knew that like we were there for support, but like it was up to him to get those numbers in. And when it was all said and done, I ran that for several years, and our collection hovered at like above 99% like collections across that 100-door portfolio. Yeah. And it was a lot, because we gave them a good system, and then, like, held them accountable. And we still had we run off EOS. So we ran off of EOS. So we were having the weekly level 10 too, like with, other people inside of the company. But we were, if we had any big push, we'd get it from that weekly meeting and then bring it back and he'd execute. But I'd say having the right virtual assistant was key, because this guy was amazing. And then the other thing, but I've seen it happen more than once, because when I moved to Richmond, Virginia, we duplicated it again. We had a different virtual assistant. It was a 50-door portfolio with no in-house person this time, and all virtual assistant. So like I've seen it replicated, but we had a great system again, and the virtual assistant was really good and had property management experience. So we were able to give them that direction, and our collections rate was crazy high during that time too. So that's what I would say the keys are to running it in-house with a virtual assistant.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I know after we had that conversation, I think about 5 months later, that's when we officially turned, like, I think actually like next month we switched to that model. And then like 3 months later, 4 months later, like we were profitable in our property management again. So,
awesome.
So that was really cool. I think one of the things that we kind of realized is that, like, just like you said, like I was really good at making the decisions. I couldn't have those conversations. And that tenant was like, oh, I need another week. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Like I can be that guy. So I'm just good at making the decisions. I can't like have that conversation stuff. But so knowing that, but that's the system of like, hey, Brian can't do that. He's not good at that. So pushing that on. So, all right, let's move into a little bit of now. I know you were talking about, so you moved down to Richmond, Virginia, and you kind of, like you said, you got into the guy's books and said, hey, let's, we need to work with this. And that's where you said the light went off for you and like, hey, there could be a business around this. So this is when you created, Simple CFO Solutions. So let's dig into that a little bit. Kind of what is that, and kind of what do you provide for real estate investors then?
Sure. That's where I saw the biggest need was in between the CPA and the bookkeeper. It was more of a strategist CFO person who knew real estate investing and could interpret the numbers to the investor, and could also implement profit first to make sure that they're thinking about profit, accountable to their profit, and have a system for their profit. So that was what really sparked it. So that was where what we do mainly is we work with the bookkeeper on the team, so like if you've got a bookkeeper in place, we make sure that they're inputting the numbers correctly, that we make sure that they are actually up to date and giving you the reports that you need. And then we have those higher level meetings with the owner to go over those numbers. So that's the first portion, is really the bookkeeping management / high level numbers. That's what we do. Then the second portion is profit first, is setting up that system, running it, and actually keeping the bookkeeper and the owner accountable to it, and showing them what that can really provide them, and thinking about the profit and taking profit first. So it's really, that's what we do at the core, because all the people that work with us too, like, are either trained on real estate investing books, have extensive knowledge in real estate investing, or are real estate investors themselves too. So that's huge, because we only service real estate investors, because I know that there's a huge need in this area, because every mastermind I've gone to, like, ever in the real estate world, it's, everyone's, like you said, Brian, everyone likes the deals, but they're usually just not thinking about the financial portion until it smacks them across the face somehow, whether that's a tax bill that they weren't expecting to receive, or an audit on their books, or whether it's, just a bunch of different scenarios that can creep in there. And then that's when they get serious about it. That's where I'm wanting to change that mindset to say, you don't even have to do more deals to make more money. You just have to manage your finances better, and you'll start making more money right away. Like, you don't have to live that deal to deal cycle thinking, oh, I've got to have 15 deals this month in order to be successful. No, what do you need, and what can you manage right now that you're not managing that will actually increase your profitability?
Yeah. No, it's, I love that you say that. That's really what it is. You manage your finances correctly, and kind of even just know the numbers and be on top of it. Like, there's one certain area of our business where Brett and I have dug into it, and we've saved our company $100,000 just this year in one area. So that's crazy. And there's always things too, when something like COVID happens, all of a sudden the question becomes, oh man, we can't do any deal. Like, deals are like just drying up right now. It's hard to do. So how many months can we get by? How much cash do we have on reserve, or those things? You need to know those things to be able to make decisions and, keep your business healthy. So let's talk about you being, so I'm sure you go in, you work with other investors, you go in and work with other businesses. So what are some of the things that kind of jump out, maybe like kind of the overwhelming theme that you see happen over and over when you open up some of these books and like, oh man, how do you not know this? Or how are you not looking at this? Or what are some of those mistakes that you see investors making and business owners making once you dig into the books?
First, do they have a set of books? So that's usually the very first thing. It's where that's even been more surprising, and I guess less surprising now as we're working with more and more people.
Whew, I'm ahead of the curve then. I'm excited. Whew.
Right. Yeah, because that's the first thing. Either people are running on spreadsheets or not consistently or doing this, that, or the other thing. If you're a single operator, and a lot of them, unless you just have the penchant of like, I need to set something up on this side, they're just going after the deal. So that's really what it is about. And I understand that. You're the entrepreneur, you're the real estate investor. Totally understand that. But that's the first thing is I've seen over and over again, do they even have a set of books? And if they do have a set of books, they usually are handing that off to a bookkeeper, but usually a bookkeeper who's not versed in real estate investing. So they're not either setting it up correctly, or that bookkeeper isn't getting the stuff input in a timely fashion. And sometimes that hinges on the owner too, like not having a process with that bookkeeper and on the financial side to get them the info that they need, because that's the other thing too. A lot of stuff that happens, unless you have an airtight system, you're going to have to be communicating constantly with that bookkeeper. So unless you have a system already established, that's one thing I see over and over, that a bunch of people are just behind on their books too, because the bookkeeper comes to them, asks them questions, the real estate investor doesn't get back to them for a while, or doesn't know the best way to communicate, like this is what they're actually looking for, or the bookkeeper doesn't know how to communicate that. So that's where I see too, just people are behind and not getting the numbers that they really need in order to operate their business. That's probably one of the biggest headaches, is people are just flying blind. They're flying blind in their business. They don't know the numbers. They don't know the story that the numbers are telling them, their own story. So that would be probably the biggest things that I see. Then there's also the cash flow issue, and that's where Profit First comes in and really helps put a system around that. But those would be the biggest areas I see. Number one, do they even have a set of books? Number two, if they do, are they behind, or is there a better system that they need? And then the cash flow cycle, really getting Profit First around that.
Yeah. I know that's something that, Brett and I have always talked about, working with other investors and helping, do some education and stuff like that, is basically like when you do start your business, one of your first hires needs to be that bookkeeper, and making sure that they know exactly kind of what the real estate side is. It's a real estate bookkeeper, and at least just going with that and stuff. Because we were in that situation where that was not one of our first hires. When Brett, kind of had this business, had been going for a while. And honestly, we got to the point where our books were a mess. It took us like a year to really get caught up on,
Yep.
Hey, make sure we're on track. We actually know our numbers. They're real. They're like live time numbers and stuff like that. So once you get behind, it's tough to keep up. And then do you really know what's going on in your business? So something to definitely consider. So you have a Facebook group for Profit First for REI. You have a podcast, Profit First for REI. You have a book coming out, Profit First for REI. So David, what the heck is Profit First then? Give us a little synopsis of what this actually means. As I know we've kind of mentioned it, talked about it a little bit here.
So first, the mindset, which you touched on, was a lot of people think that it is sales minus expenses equals profit. So that's the normal accepted way of thinking, that you pay everyone else all your expenses, then what's left over is yours to keep. And usually that's negative or nothing. So it's shifting the mindset to sales minus profit equals expenses. So you're thinking, I make a sale on a house, or I have rental income, and I delegate that money first to the like a profit account or something like that, to make sure that you are actually taking your profit first. So it's shifting the mindset of, oh, wow, I actually need to pay myself, and I need to be healthy for the business to be healthy and for everything else. So it's shifting that mindset from paying everyone else first and paying all the expenses and racking that up, getting the shiny object syndrome and thinking that you need everything right away and right now. And it's shifting that mindset to say, no, sales minus profit, and then I live on the expenses that's left over. So that equals that expenses. So really, in practicality, the first step is the actual steps to Profit First. Number one, setting up bank accounts, or at least a bank account. I'm on this. There's core accounts in the original Profit First book, and I'm all for those foundational accounts. I still love them, where it's the profit account, It's the owner's pay account, the owner's tax account, and then the operating expense. And then there's the income account, which is just a holding bucket that as you have income come in and you push them to the rest of the accounts. So I still like those foundational accounts, but I tell people now, just set up the profit account. Like step number one should be setting up an account specifically for profit and getting that in place, because that'll shift your mindset right away and start getting you in the habit. If you say, man, I've already got a ton of bank accounts, or like, what in the world, this is way too much, I don't want to set all those up. Set up one extra account just specifically for profit. You can do that. You can go away from this podcast and have that and see a mental shift in your mindset and see you beginning to be profitable just by taking that profit first and transferring like 1% to it. Because that's step number two, is transferring percentages into those accounts once you get that in. So like if you have a property sale, then you're actually saying, from this sale, I made, 10 grand on this wholesale deal. You split up that 10 grand into percentage points, and those percentages get to assign to those different bank accounts. So like, a percentage for the profit, a percentage to pay you, a percentage for the taxes, and then the percentage for the operational expenses. So those other accounts get assigned a certain percentage, and then you're actually transferring that and making it a habit. That's why if you can't do all those accounts, or you're at least going to have a profit account and an operational expense account, like at least set those two up, because you'll already have the operational expense account. That's what you're running on right now. But setting up that profit account and transferring money into that, even if it's 1%, that will change your mindset and establish a habit of moving money that is specifically designated to the profitability of your company. That's where after that, it's paying yourself too. That's why the next account, like open up one to pay yourself as the owner, the owner's pay account, making sure that you as the owner are healthy. Because if you go down, the business goes down, and you don't have any employees, you don't have anything inside the business, that defeats the whole purpose of the business and why you got into real estate investing. You did not get into it just to feed the monster and make less than you could at McDonald's. So you want to make sure you've got an account for that and for your taxes too, because the business should be saving for your taxes at the end of the year. So those are the foundational principles and steps of what I'll be teaching in the Profit First book. And then from there, there's like the different things related to real estate, like actually allocating the money. Like, when do you do that? Because in the original book, Mike says on the 10th and 25th, and in real estate, we all know that it's when you sell the deals, it's going to be a lot different. Like, I work with people that sell one property a quarter, one property a month, several properties a week, so like you got the gamut in real estate investing. So it's really going through that and saying, okay, what works for you, and when can I take that money and actually allocate it into this system? So that's just a high level overview, of some of the steps to Profit First. But I would say an actual step, a nitty gritty action detail that you can do is just set up one account specifically for profit and start transferring as low as 1% into that account to get in that habit. Because like in the original book, Mike says, profit is a habit, not an event. You have to make it a habit, and not just something that, woohoo, it's the end of the year and we made this amount of money I can take out. Oh, good. It was actually positive. So it's from every single deal or every single rent check that comes in, that you have to be profitable from day one.
Yeah. I think it's a big, big mindset shift of where I know, and we were in this boat at one point too. And, a lot of real estate investors that throughout the last couple of years that I've talked to, they were in the same boat where, the profit they made on each deal they're putting it right back into the business and keeping going. Cause hey, okay, we made, 10 grand on this deal, 10 grand on this deal. Okay, great. We can make it. We can buy another house with that money and stuff. But really it comes down to, is that really profit? Can you call it profit if you're putting it right back in the business and still utilizing it on your day-to-day operations? Question is no, or the answer is no. Like it's not really profit. So just having that little mindset shift of, hey, if it's 1% here, all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is fine. We're not missing that. Okay, now it's 5%. All of a sudden that continues to grow. It's kind of like I liken it to the whole, the idea behind tithing. Once you start giving back, once you start doing this, you don't notice it and you see the benefits from it and all those things. So in this case, you actually have money in your pocket to go out and do whatever you want with. Exactly. So even a little bit more. So so Mike McAllister's book, Profit First, out there now. It's been out for a few years now. Definitely, read that. Great read and stuff. A lot of tidbits to take from that. Your book, do you know, when is it coming out? And then kind of what is what can somebody that reads Mike's book versus your book, what can they kind of just, what's a little, that next step that you kind of take it to for real estate investors?
Sure. So it will be out next year. So the publication process and the whole book writing, launching, everything, that it's a new world. Yeah, it's been an awesome experience going down this path and learning from experts on how to do it. So, but it is definitely one of the most time consuming and one of the most difficult things I've done in this point in my life, just writing a book like this and making sure that it is a life-changing book, because I want it to be. I want this to be a very clear roadmap for real estate investors. And that's the big difference between the original book and this book. The original book is for any type of business. My book is specifically for real estate investors with examples from real estate investing companies. I also change up the steps a little bit and the allocations of like how to actually set that up, because it's different in real estate investing. So I'm making sure that I give examples for if you're a landlord, if you're a fix and flip or a wholesaler, the stories that I've seen with clients and how they've been doing it currently and how we've implemented with them, or someone who may have set it up specifically before or whatnot and how they're applying it. So it's really a collection of what people have done, what we've done with clients, and the steps, those actual steps. And then also one of the big things that I'm a proponent of is the keeping and building reserves. I know in the profit account, we've already talked about that, but like not touching that money then, that like you can actually make more money by having some money sit in your accounts in the profit account or saving for taxes throughout the year than always buying that next deal, like of going after and draining your account, because lenders like to see money in the account. They like to see money coming in and sitting there. So it's like, whether it's private money or bank money and like refinancing or whatever that you're going to be doing, you are going to use other people's money no matter what. So you need to make sure that you have those reserves and that you really have that. It's for growing the business, which it sounds so backwards. Like I don't use my money in order to grow the business. Exactly. Like you want reserves for yourself to be able to use the other money, and you're showing people that you're financially responsible now. So that's the other big detail that a lot of people just I don't think understand as a real estate investor. You don't have to use every single dollar. Like Brian was saying, you get the $10,000 wholesale fee. Don't just pour it all back into the business and have it go right back out the door. You're actually shooting yourself in the foot from growing, which is like, sounds backwards, but it is the way to grow, is by not spending every single dollar on what you think you need to in order to buy that next deal or do that next thing. It's actually hurting you and shooting yourself in the foot. So that's where, if you have those reserves, it's to grow the business. It's for your peace of mind. Like if you actually have several months reserve in the accounts, like 3 months reserve to be able to weather storms like a global pandemic that no one can see coming, like those things that you never would think of in a million years. And then it also is the security for your team. If you start building a team, they'll want to know like, hey, I'm going to have a job here, even if a storm comes, like he's not going to have to start laying people off left and right. So those reserves are an investment in yourself, in your people, in the inside of growing your business too. Those reserves are like for a lot of different things. So that's one of the things I teach, is just that mindset, where I feel like a lot of real estate investors, like you said, Brian, just take it and all that money and pour it back into the business, but don't see real growth. All they're doing is living deal to deal, paycheck to paycheck, basically, and not really taking a step back and becoming profitable. So that's one thing. One other thing too is setting up an account specifically for other people's money. Like do that right away too. So like you get short-term loans if you're a fix and flipper or whatnot. If you ever get any type of short-term loan like that, I would have a separate account so that way you're not spending the rehab money on your operational expenses.
Yeah.
I know it happens a ton, but that's just one extra layer for yourself to be able to do that. So there's a couple of the things that I introduce in the book that are a little different than the original book, and just going deeper into the real estate investing side.
Awesome. Love it. Can't wait, man. Can't wait to read it. Super excited for that. And then I do have one more question before we get you out of here. I know we're running a little short on time, but so I know, and I've seen you a little bit more active. I've seen you kind of getting involved in just like different, whether it's Facebook groups or just networking groups, masterminds. What has that done for you and just kind of your career, your mindset shift, and just like kind of your ambition to like, hey, wow, I can take this, or I can grow it. I can do this. I can work with other investors, but kind of being in the room with some higher level people that are maybe, speak even above you and things like that. What has that done for you?
Oh yeah, I mean, you are who you hang around. So that's where those rooms, I'm increasingly going to different types of rooms. A lot of the times it's real estate investor masterminds, and I love those. And that's where I can provide the service. That's where I can get the message out to the core audience and to where real estate investors need to know this message. But I'm in some masterminds, like you were saying, it's more for me to grow too, where it's not real estate related and it's business related, and being able to scale my business profitably. I use the profit first principles inside of my business. So it's really making sure that I'm doing what I can in order to grow. And it's helped me in my mindset, my ambition. I can see, I think bigger now because I'm able to be connected to those people that are thinking a lot higher than I am. Like, that's where before, if I would have never gone to a mastermind or anything, I wouldn't have the goal to like reach 1 million investors with this message. So like, that's what I want to do. I want to change 1 million investors' lives through this, whether it be through our Facebook group and free information, to the book when it comes out and, like a very low level thing, or if we actually go into with our business and help investors. Like, I want to change the whole mindset of the real estate investing industry. And I think a big attribute of that is going to these masterminds and going to those types of things where people have already done that with what they're doing and seeing, oh, wow, like they're a normal person. They're a normal person who is focused on this thing and saying, if I can get this out, it is such a valuable piece of information or a valuable system or concept or whatever, that I have to get this out. So I've seen other people do that. And now that I have that thing where it's like, I have to get this message out because I truly believe profit first for real estate investors can save businesses, but also help grow profitably. And you don't have to go to these meetings feeling like a fraud, like going to these types of mastermind meetings. That's where it gets me lit up, like inside. I just light up inside and say, this is where I have to get this message out. And I see these other people with their messages getting it out and what it takes to get it out, and saying, I can do that. I can follow this system or process. That's where I've learned in the masterminds, everything worth doing or everything that is valuable has a system or process behind it, a principle that you can find and follow. And if you follow that, you're going to end up where you want to be. It's like biblical principles. You follow the Bible, you're going to end up where you need to be as far as that goes. I mean, you can take this any direction you want. And I've figured this out going to these meetings, like, oh, this is what he followed. This is the steps that he followed. And guess what? This matches up with like a bunch of the other people that I've talked to and met up with. This is kind of like the skeleton framework. They don't provide the step-by-step of what I should do. They provide the principles of, this is what will work if you follow this core set of principles and apply them to your specific situation. So that's probably been the most eye-opening thing in these meetings that I've been going to, is all these other people, like, you're going to go to rooms where you're smarter than people and you're not smarter than people. And on both ends of the spectrum, there are people that are smarter than you that are doing better than you or worse than you, and people that are less smart than you that are doing better than you or worse than you. It has nothing to do with who you are. It has more with who you can become and get around and change into in order to become that person that can follow those sets of principles. So I think that's been very eye-opening too, because a lot of people come in with this like, oh, is this right for me? Or is this, like, can I really do this? I believe in my heart of hearts, like, anyone can. They just have to unlock a lot of set of doors. Some people might have more mindset roadblocks than others, but I believe everyone, if they could be in these types of rooms and see that these people are very normal people, that like they could do this too. So that would be, there you go. That was a long oratory on that.
Well, preach it, brother.
I feel like that's been one of the most eye-opening things for me going to these meetings.
No, it's awesome. Such a great message in there. I just want to recap something you said that really stood out to me. It's not about who you are. It's about who you can become. I think that's great. I think that's a really good message to get out of that. Same thing within your business. It's not about where you are in your business right now. It's about what you can become within your business. And one of the things to be able to do that is the profit first model. Great model to go by. Mr. David Richter, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you, man. If somebody wants to reach out to you, find out more information about your company, about what you're doing, where can they go?
SimpleCFOsolutions.com is our main place for our company. Like if you want to work with us with what we talked about, managing that financial process and then actually implementing Profit First. Then if you want the free info, like if you just want the Profit First side, we've got the podcast everywhere where podcasts are distributed. So it's Profit First REI podcast. And then we've got the Facebook group too. Just look up Profit First for real estate investors. It's a closed group right now, a private group. And we ask some questions. Just say you came from this podcast. We'll make sure to let you in. We just don't want a bunch of people selling things in there, and like making the integrity of the group go down. So we're pretty stringent on what we let in there, because we give a lot of information in there. So those would be a couple of the different ways to connect with us right now.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I have one give.
Yep,
I do have one give. I always want to give this when I'm on a podcast. If you email the email address lessstressmoreprofit@gmail.com, if you email that, I have an autoresponder set up where it sends you the book that I wrote last year. It's a shorter book just called Less Stress, More Profit for the Serious Real Estate Investor, and the audiobook too. So that way you can listen to it, because I listen to audiobooks way more than reading them because of how busy. Then the other things that are in there, I actually give some more, like just some spreadsheets from the Profit First system, or like a chart of accounts for real estate investors. So if you email that email address, there's actually several things where you could get started right away with the Profit First process. And I just always want to give, I have to get this message out. And like, if you don't work with me ever, that's fine. Like, just implement this in your business, like make sure that this is not the David pitch. This is like making sure you have Profit First for real estate investing inside of your business. And because I've seen it change so many lives. So anything I can give away that we can help with that message.
Awesome. And that was lessstressmoreprofit@gmail.com.
Yep. That's it.
All right. Awesome. And if you need anything from us, let me know. I'm Brian at simplewholesaling.com. Pretty easy to reach out to. If you have any questions about the show, comments about the show, any shows you want us to do down the road, let us know. If there's anything we can do to help you out, love to be here for you. With that, that's another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. Take care, guys.